What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, the Financial Conspirator, your guide for everything financials and conspiracies. Today we're going to be talking about Bitcoin and strategy, the most asymmetric bets of our lifetime, and how Bitcoin scarcity, MSTR institutional front-running, and Hyperbitcoinization offer us with an amazing opportunity.
Remind the American public and investors why you need a Bitcoin reserve at all.
Well, good to be here. I mean, the reason why we need a Bitcoin reserve is that the federal government already owns some. In fact, it obtained around 400,000 Bitcoin over the past decade through criminal and civil forfeitures and seizures. And so the government has to have a strategy for how it deals with this. In the past, the strategy has been simply to sell it, in an ad hoc way, almost willy-nilly. And that cost American taxpayers something like $17 billion in lost value. So we want to have a long-term strategy to maximize the value of these holdings, and we've decided that Bitcoin is scarce, it's valuable, and that it's strategic for the United States to hold on to this as a long-term reserve asset. So that's the plan with the 200,000 Bitcoin that we believe are in the possession of the federal government. I say we believe because no one really knows for sure because we never had a proper audit. So that's one of the first things that this executive order provides, that we're going to do a full government-wide audit to find out what digital assets we actually have, so they can be safeguarded and moved into a strategy that maximizes their long-term value.
But let's get into the exact verbiage used in this executive order. The reserve will be capitalized with Bitcoin owned by the federal government that was forfeited as part of a criminal or civil asset forfeiture proceeding. This means it will not cost taxpayers a dime. Bitcoin only. The Secretaries of Treasury and Commerce are authorized to develop budget-neutral strategies for acquiring additional Bitcoin, provided that those strategies have no incremental cost on American taxpayers. So despite what your Twitter bears, your Reddit, your Discord bears are saying, the government will be buying more Bitcoin. And the government will not be acquiring additional assets for the stockpile beyond those obtained through forfeiture proceedings for shitcoins, right? So XRP isn't getting bought, ADA isn't getting bought. They're just holding on to any of those coins that are forfeited through criminal. This means XRP and ADA, other shitcoins, are not going to be actively purchased by the government, only forfeited by criminals. Now, where does strategy fit into all this? MSTR owns nearly 3% of the scarcest asset on Earth. They own 500,000 Bitcoin. There's only 1.2 million left to be mined. Can someone explain why this shouldn't be the most valuable company on the stock market? Now, give my ex a follow, financial consp. But let's get back to it. MSTR. Bitcoin itself is competing with money, with all of store of value assets, with all network payment systems. So that total addressable market cap is $900 trillion. Bitcoin is competing with all of that. MSTR is worth 3% of all of value itself. Do you understand that? Because Bitcoin is competing with value itself, and it will overtake because it's better than art, it's better than land, it's better than gold. So it will replace all of that. In my humble opinion, I am a maximalist. None of this is financial advice. I could be very wrong. But if I am wrong, explain to me why in the comment section. So as Bitcoin replaces $900 trillion, MSTR will be worth 3% of that. This is not priced in. No one is nearly bullish enough. I see guys like British Hodl getting a lot of flack for his 60,000, 30,000 per share call. If you guys heard what I thought the share could go to, man, I'm going to keep my mouth shut. So, net neutral purchases. If the government were to issue Bitcoin-backed bonds, backed by the Bitcoin they already hold, that would be budget neutral. They use those bonds to buy more Bitcoin, and then they issue more bonds backed by that Bitcoin to buy more. Strategy playbook. That's budget neutral to taxpayers. That's just one strategy. Now, the Sovereign Wealth Fund. What if they take some of that money that's in bonds, that's losing money because bonds are negative since Strategy has adopted Bitcoin, and MSTR convertible bonds are outperforming Bitcoin itself on average. So not only could the US government get exposure to Bitcoin, they could be outperforming it via MSTR. And I know you're thinking that's probably a conflict of interest. But Howard Lutnick already owns $1 billion of MSTR via his firm in Cantor Fitzgerald. They increased their holdings to $1 billion in Q4. $1 billion, folks. And we know that the Norway Central Bank owns $500 million of MSTR as of Q4. So the blocks are falling into place here. Now let's listen to Mark Moss explain how the second phase of Bitcoin adoption is so much faster than the first phase.
Apple went up 1.5 million% in this first phase. And then Apple went into phase 2 and went up another 50,000% from there. Microsoft went up about 40,000% in phase 1. Phase 2 went up over 1,000,000%. Well, everyone sat on the sidelines thinking that they missed it, not realizing that these things move in cycles. Let's overlay this and look at where we are in this new age of decentralization and Bitcoin, etc. This is the very first part of the technology of diffusion where just the true believers, the early adopters, all start to come to play. Well, what happens is in phase 2, it's now called the frenzy phase. It's been proven out by the true believers, the early adopters, and now everybody else wants to jump in and get a piece of the pie. The time it takes to go from 0 to 10% adoption is the same amount of time it takes to go from 10% to 90% adoption.
You're already seeing Bitcoin ATMs pop up at your gas stations, your local supermarkets, Walmart. What happens when there's a QR code at self-checkout at the gas station pump and you could just pay in Satoshis? We're still very early. Most people can't even fathom this. But this next 90%, this next phase of adoption, you will be forced to notice Bitcoin. You will either hate it or you will embrace it. But no, you don't change Bitcoin. Bitcoin changes you. So are you going to take advantage of this opportunity? Are you going to join the I bought Bitcoin under 100,000 club? Are you going to be able to say that I bought Bitcoin before the US government? I bought MSTR before it was in the US government sovereign wealth fund? Because it will be soon come. And if you disagree, let me know now in the comment section. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe, check out my Twitter, my Instagram. And that's all I got for you folks. Thanks for tuning in.